if nothing else comes across in this tape to you, the final user, I would like to impart one piece of advice, and that is,
to many, Michael Jackson is known as one of the most popular and successful artists of all time. But how did Michael go about capturing the magical performances he and his crew put on in the recording studio? In today's video, I'm going to take a look at the recording tips, tricks, and techniques used by legendary recording engineer Bruce Swedien to capture Michael Jackson. We'll go over Michael Jackson's vocal chain and the full library of mics he used in different scenarios. We'll explore the innovative stereo miking techniques Bruce Swedien used to capture the true depth of the instruments he recorded. And finally, we'll explore the weird and wacky DIY devices Bruce used to capture Michael and his band. When it came to recording Michael, Bruce had an ever-evolving roster of different microphones. However, the one he used the most was the Shure SM7. Bruce used this mic for its excellent mid-range presence that it added to Michael's voice, and its ability to handle Michael's intense vocal performances.
the mic I used on Michael on this one was a SM7, sure, a dynamic mic.
I never got surrender before. The promise, baby, you love me forevermore. I swear I'm keeping you satisfied. 'Cause you're the one for me. We're making me feel. You really turn me on.
And when Bruce wanted a sweeter sound, he'd use his vintage Neumann U47, which Michael can be seen using quite frequently. In later stages of Michael's career, you can see him using more and more high-end condenser microphones. These included the AKG C12 and the Telefunken 251, which Bruce loved on background vocals, because its open and airy sound would contrast the SM7B, creating some fantastic separation. But besides having a proper microphone, there was one thing that was critical when recording Michael Jackson's vocals. And you'd probably never guess that it would be a wooden platform. Now, one critical thing the platform did do was amplify the little movements, dances, stops, snaps, and claps that Michael Jackson did while he was performing live. These greatly enhanced the feel and emotion of his performance.
So the drums were on part of it, and Michael, when they were recording, was standing on top of it. And so Michael sings by snapping his hands, and he'd stomp on the floor, and then Bruce would put that in the mix, and you can hear it in the mix.
Now, as for microphone preamps, Bruce was known for using the Neve 1081 on Michael Jackson's vocal, and you'll almost always see the custom-made rack with him wherever he goes. The 1081 would then go to an 1176 compressor. According to his assistants, he would set it on a 12:1 ratio and do little to no compression.
You did use an 1176 a lot on Michael's vocals on a lot of occasions, didn't you?
Absolutely, yeah, but just as we say at the University of Minnesota, just a squirt.
But what's more interesting is that Dave Pensato recently revealed that Bruce Swedien built his own custom 1176. Perhaps this is what he used.
He had lots of little things, lots of little techniques, and he built his own 1176.
Speaking of some of his recording techniques, Bruce had a unique process for recording background vocals. He would record the lead vocals and the first few doubles close to the microphone. But as Michael sang more harmonies and more vocals, he'd move them farther away from the mic. This would allow the microphone to pick up more room sound and early reflections, which gave depth and distance to his background vocals. And when Bruce wanted to add more distance to his vocals, he'd even take out a stereo pair and use that instead of a single microphone for the backgrounds.
This position would add a lot of the early reflections that are occurring in this acoustical space to the sound. But if you want to eliminate the acoustical support, or let's say minimize the acoustical support, you can have it as close as this, and I frequently do that. Then the first harmony, we record that, and if you'll notice there on the middle harmony, I do a basic and a double up close, and then the triple is stereo mic. On tracks 10 and 11 is a stereo recording of the triple with Michael way back.
What is one thing that pro mix engineers like Bruce Swedien obsess over, and gives them the advantage over the amateur engineer? Is it a secret plugin, compressor, or mix trick? The answer may surprise you that it's none of these. Instead, it's the acoustics of a space and the sound of a studio. Unfortunately, most of y'all have poor room acoustics and terrible studio setups, which hinder your mixes and productions. Poor room acoustics can ultimately lead to inaccurate sound perception and compromised judgment, which often leads to subpar mixes and productions. Luckily for you, I've teamed up with Platinum Grammy-nominated master engineer and acoustics expert Gerhard Westphalen to bring you the Acoustics course. Besides mastering records for some of today's top artists like Burna Boy, Ed Sheeran, and Chris Martin, Gerhard Westphalen has also designed countless rooms for some of today's top mixers. But what makes him unique is his ability to thrive in less than ideal circumstances. In this course, Gerhard will take you from no studio to pro studio level. He'll teach you the fundamentals of acoustics and sound, how to measure your room to identify problems, how to build affordable treatment, which is more cost effective and efficient than any market alternative, and how to design your ideal studio no matter the circumstance. As a bonus for watching this video, I'm going to be providing the treatment build plans, a studio monitor placement guide, and studio design checklist to get you on the right path to revolutionizing your studio. All you have to do is click the link in the description below, enter in your email, and you'll be good to go. And if you're interested in checking out this course, go to www.georgetmusic.com or click the link in the description below and check out the course. Now moving back to the beginning of the video, what was that one piece of wisdom Bruce Swedien wanted to let everyone know?
I would like to impart one piece of advice, and that is to try to make our recordings sound more than merely multi-channel mono. In other words, try to think of stereo during the recording process, during the concept of the music that we're working on.
One aspect that made Bruce's signature sound was his different stereo miking techniques he used on different kinds of instruments. This would allow him to achieve a great sense of depth in his recordings.
One thing that helps there more than anything is the use of stereophonic microphone technique wherever possible. In other words, if you're recording acoustic guitar, don't just stick a microphone in front of it and make a mono image of that. Put two microphones, coincident pair, and really work on the sound. This is what makes left, right, and deep and depth in a music recording.
Perhaps one of the greatest examples of this was the way Bruce Swedien recorded choirs. He would use a blum line technique, which would involve placing two condenser microphones, both set at figure 8 patterns coincident to each other. Watch Bruce set up this technique.
The idea with this microphone technique is to have the capsules as close together as possible physically, to minimize the phase differences of the arrival time of the sound.
But perhaps one of the most famous examples of this technique was the Man in the Mirror choir.
Listen to Man in the Mirror, listen to the choir on Man in the Mirror, and that's a Bloomline pair, and that choir, it was a gospel choir.
It's the Andre Crouch choir.
And I defy any human being to duplicate that. He tells you how he did it, he tells you who did it, where he did it, and I defy anybody to make that.
Dave, it's so simple. There's nothing to it. You know what you do? I'll give you the perfect explanation for how to get a great choir recording like Man in the Mirror. Go out and get yourself a great choir.
These miking techniques also extended to other instruments, such as the piano. In this case, Bruce would use an XY miking technique.
This is a wonderful mic for piano recording. I love this in a grand piano. Again, XY, if you aimed it at the keys, or the strings rather, and then do it in this coincident pair.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, you basically, are you using a cardioid on both of those? Are you?
Oh, they're figure of 8. But you see this microphone here focuses on the high strings, which are shorter.
Okay.
You see, right? I can't see right here.
Yeah,
and then this microphone here focuses on the low string.
Bruce also used these stereo miking techniques to add depth to electronic instruments, or things that couldn't be mic'd.
Problem with synthesizers, though, has always been to me the reality or the starkness of the direct sound is not very interesting. And I will send the sound out into the studio or a room. You don't really need a studio, but a big room, and then mic the room to get the early reflections and some acoustic support, true acoustic support to the sound, and then add back just a little bit of that microphone, the acoustic support, to the direct sound, and it tremendously expands the quality of the synthesizer.
Even on sources that were usually recorded in mono, like guitars, Bruce would do some stereo miking configurations. If he had a 2x12 cabinet, he'd use a spaced pair of condenser microphones to capture it. Now, one instrument that was absolutely essential to Michael Jackson's songs were the drums. So how did Bruce get amazing drum sounds for these records? First and foremost, he always worked with Quincy Jones, who would always hire the perfect drummer for the song. These drummers were so good that it required little effort to get a great sounding drum tone. On kick drum, Bruce would frequently use a MD421, AKG C12, or Electro Voice RE20. And on top of the kick drum head, he'd place his custom-made cover, which gave the kick a tighter and snappier sound by reducing room ambience. Here on snare, you can see he was using a pretty standard mic, like the SM57. But here, Bruce implemented another custom-made device of his, which was the snare baffle. This was basically some plywood and foam that would reduce the bleed between the hi-hat and the snare drum. On toms, Bruce would frequently use Neumann U87s, and liked using ribbon microphones on overheads, the ride, and the hi-hat. And when recording the drum kit, he would place it on top of his signature drum riser, and to help reduce ambience in the drum recording, he placed tube traps around the kit. Throughout his career, Bruce used a variety of different recording consoles. In the early days, albums such as Thriller were recorded using a Harrison 32C console, and most of the time during the early stages of Michael and Bruce's relationship, they'd use a Harrison console for mixing and recording. However, as technology advanced and the duo needed more tracks, they started to use other consoles. At one point, Bruce and Michael commissioned the largest SSL console ever built at the time, which is capable of 200 automated mix channels. They also commissioned one of the biggest speaker systems, 3 Oceanway HR1s, which were each a whopping 11 feet wide and 7 feet tall. And let's just say they would crank their music. Now, after the recording process came the mixdown process. And one thing that might shock you about Bruce's mixing process was his lack of
I
compression.
have a kind of an old saying where I say that compression is for kids. I hate compression.
I'm a nut about not using compression in a mix.
But instead of using compression, he would rely on automation to bring out emotion in the mix.
My dear friend Bruce Swedien, who mixed all the Michael Jackson stuff, he never used the bus compressor ever. But what he did do is he would listen to every song, he would look for every hook and every lick, and maybe Nathan East would do one little bass bump that sounded amazing, and he basically would ride every detail, anything that created emotion or improved the mix, Bruce wrote it to do that.
Then when Bruce was mixing, he'd spend time on his JBL 411s and his Oratones. But with his Oratones, he had a trick to achieving pristine balance.
Bruce really did like to have great big speakers and listen to everything else, but when he was all done with the mix, he would listen to one Oratone in mono at about 65 dB, and he says, can I hear every hook? Is there a line that I cannot hear? He's not really using it to balance, he's just to make sure that if anybody's standing there, there's something in there that's critical to the song that I can't hear.
So he didn't spend a lot of time working on that one.
No, he just really, it was like, is there anything I'm missing? So if you're in a supermarket and you hear one speaker
Exactly,
inside,
yeah.
am I not hearing that guitar hook that Paul Jackson did or something that is part of it?
Hopefully y'all enjoyed this video taking a look at some of Michael Jackson's recording secrets. If you did, don't forget to hit like and subscribe down below. Anyways, I'll see y'all in the next video.